As everyone probably knows, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel had a meeting in the White House, and it seems like things went pretty good for both sides. And let's be clear about one thing. I am not saying the war is going to end tomorrow and it's a guarantee of peace in the Middle East. I'm not saying that at all. But of everything we've heard about the war in the last couple of years, really last couple of months, this might be the single biggest development in this conflict. Because it seems like we are finally making real progress to not just a short-term peace deal, but maybe, just maybe, a long-term and permanent peace deal in this region, which if that happens, would be a massive success. And let's be clear, it's not a guarantee that this does happen, right? That's the one thing people gotta understand. Just because there's a good chance of it occurring, it's not 100% a guarantee, because this is Palestine and Israel after all. This is not countries that like each other. So it's entirely possible that this does fall through. I get that. But before we get into the real details of what they discussed, President Trump did force Netanyahu to apologize to the Prime Minister of Qatar, which, good. For those that don't know, for really no reason, Israel bombed Qatar a couple weeks ago. It was such an embarrassment that even the Trump admin called him out on this, like, wait, hold up, you're bombing Qatar for no reason? It was such a pathetic embarrassment that Netanyahu was forced to eventually apologize. And he did just that earlier today. But that's enough of that. That's before they really got into the details. And let's talk about what allegedly was agreed upon between not just the United States and Israel, but even between countries like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Pakistan, etc., which we're actually getting confirmation that this is not only real, but a bunch of these countries are actually going to Hamas in Gaza, and they're talking to them and saying, listen, sign the deal. This might be your best opportunity to end the war for good. So again, this is a developing story. We don't know for sure if they're going to agree to this, but it sounds like there is real momentum. The fact of countries like Saudi Arabia and Turkey saying yes to this, that's a good sign. That is a really good sign for this peace agreement. Now, let's talk about what actually is in the agreement, because it's a lot. It's not just one sentence and that's it. No, it's a very detailed plan as to what President Trump is offering. And let's be clear about this. It's not a guarantee this goes through. But if you're Gaza, if you're Palestine, you would 100% agree to this. Like, the more you read into what they actually proposed, this is a win-win for both sides, especially for Palestinians. So the first thing is, Gaza will be de-radicalized terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors, which is just common sense. Now, some people are concerned that, well, what does it actually mean? Does that mean all Palestinians have to be forced out? No. From what we are hearing, and based on the fact that Saudi Arabia and Jordan, they're supporting this, it probably just means, hey, function like a real society. Don't bomb civilians, stop the insanity, function like real people. That's all they're talking about. They're not saying, oh, no Palestinians. No, that's horseshit. From based on what we're hearing, it's not anything like that. Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza, who have suffered more than enough. If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will immediately end. Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed-upon line to prepare for a hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended. And this is the first huge bullet point. If both sides agree to this, Israel and Gaza and Hamas or whatever, the war ends immediately. When they sign this piece of paper, it's done, it's over with, which if that actually happens, and President Trump is able to end this war, that is a huge win. I don't care what you think about Trump. Like, some people might argue he should have done this sooner. I get that. But if he actually ends the war immediately like this, and you end all the conflict, people will be saying, hell yes. Within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting this agreement, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Common sense. Once all hostages are released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after October 7, 2023, including all women and children detained in that context. Yeah. So, all these prisoners that Israel has, they have to release them as well. They can't just say, oh, we got our people back and nobody else. No, you actually have to work with both sides. And Israel apparently agreed to this. I mean, this is the entire agreement, and they agree to everything. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peacefully coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. And that's another huge thing. They're telling Hamas, listen, if you promise to actually be peaceful, you give up your weapons, you will be given amnesty. You are allowed to coexist, and if you really want to, you can leave. Upon acceptance of this agreement, full aid will be immediately sent into the Gaza Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in the January 19th, 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, which again, just common sense. Entry, distribution, and aid in the Gaza Strip will proceed without interference from the two parties through the UN and its agencies. Again, this is common sense that this should be happening anyways. The fact that it's being explicitly mentioned like this is just crazy, but that's the state of the war right now. Gaza will be governed under the temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of public services for the people of Gaza. The committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts, with oversight and supervision by a new international transitional body, the Board of Peace, which will be headed and chaired by President Donald Trump and other members and heads of states to be announced, including former Prime Minister Tony Blair. And that's a real sentence, everybody. You have President Trump and Tony Blair and a few other people. They will essentially be running Gaza for the next couple of years, which I actually think is not a bad idea. I know it sounds crazy. I mean, it's a big meme. Like, this is the year 2025 and we have Trump and Tony Blair doing this. When you think about it, a big issue with the Middle East is there's never any time for stability. There's always chaos. It's a shit show every year. But if you have this committee ran by Trump and Tony Blair and others, it might be a step in the right direction to make sure, hey, Gaza, we're going to make sure you guys are actually being rebuilt, but also make sure the crazy stuff that happened doesn't happen again. That's what I think they're trying to do here, because it seems like the problem every time is radicals always take over the city and the region, and it never ends up going good at all. So I agree with this 100%. There got to be some kind of oversight, because if you don't, we will be back in the same situation in like 5 years. The same shit will begin in like 5 years to be all for nothing. So yeah, that's a pretty big development. A Trump economic development plan to rebuild and energize Gaza will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracle cities in the Middle East. Common sense. A special economic zone will be established with preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiated with participating countries. Again, that's just common sense. They want to rebuild Gaza, make it halfway functioning, like make sure it's not just shit for the next 20 years. No, they want to actually rebuild the area and make it even better. Make it a functioning society. Nobody will be forced to leave Gaza. And this was a big question. If there was any kind of peace deal, would there be a bunch of refugees because of this? Like, would they be forced out or whatever? Apparently, no. In fact, they will be encouraging people to stay to help rebuild Gaza and make it better. And this part, I think, won a lot of people over, because people are worried about, hey, what about all these civilians? Are they going to be refugees? Who's going to deal with them? Well, now, nobody's being forced out. If you want to actually rebuild the area, you can stay. In fact, you might get some benefits out of it. So, I like this. The more you hear about this, again, there's some questions here and there, like the committee, how is it going to really work? How many years until Gaza becomes independent, potentially? What's going to happen there? But this is good stuff. Hamas and other factions agree to not have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. All military, terror, and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapon production facilities, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. And that's another big thing that Israel wants. They don't want Hamas or some other crazy faction taking over. They don't want these radical groups like Hamas doing the same shit all over again. They want to actually build the city into something nice, something that's not just a war zone 24/7. A guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and other factions comply with their obligations and that the new Gaza poses no threat to its neighbors or its people. Good. the U.S. will work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force to immediately deploy in Gaza. And of everything we've talked about so far, for a lot of people, this is the biggest concern. What do you mean, this stabilization force? Because when you read it here, it says the ISF will train and provide support to vetted Palestinian police forces in Gaza and will consult with Jordan and Egypt who have extensive experience in this field. This force will be the long-term internal security solution. And that's what they're claiming, that this organization, they're going to be basically the police force. They're going to make sure shit doesn't go haywire again. Which on paper seems like a good idea, but are they talking about boots on the ground for the U.S.? Which, if that's the case, that should be a hell no from everybody. Like, no. If this is Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, if it's these countries and they want to put forces on the ground and make sure things are stable, that's not a bad idea. But I want to see more from this. This part I am a bit skeptical about. What do they mean? Do they mean troops on the ground? If that's the case, that's a big issue. Because Americans don't want another Iraq situation where we're there for 20 years. Like, no, we want to be out. We don't want to be involved in these endless wars. Let these countries deal with it. Like, sure, have some oversight. But if it's American troops on the ground, no, that's stupid. Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. As the ISF establishes control and stability, the IDF will withdraw based on standards and timeframes linked to demilitarization that will be agreed upon between all the groups. And that is one thing that is a big guarantee that, hey, and not just 5 months from now, Israel's not going to just walk in again. No. They are promising we will not enter Gaza again. That we're done. We are done occupying this area. We're going to let these people do what they want to do. Just make sure it's peaceful. That is, again, another thing people are worried about. If you sign some kind of agreement, what is stopping them from doing this shit again in 5 years? All right? Which, again, it still could happen. But it does seem like, at the bare minimum, Trump got them to agree to say, we will not occupy Gaza during this time frame. We're not going to do anything like that. In the event Hamas delays or rejects the proposal, the above, including the scaled-up aid operation, will proceed in the terror-free areas handed over from the IDF to the ISF. And this was something that kind of stunned me. Because essentially what it's saying is, it doesn't matter what Hamas is doing. Even if they break the agreement, they do nothing, even if that's the case, Israel has to withdraw, at least from some parts of Gaza. They can't stay in the city forever. The parts that are free, the parts that have no issues, you can leave those areas. Which I'm stunned by this. Like, why did Israel agree to this? It seems kind of crazy, like, hold up. They actually agree to this? An interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to try and change mindsets and narratives of Palestinians. Again, that's whatever. While Gaza redevelopment advances and when the PA reform program is faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. And when I saw this, I was stunned. And I think a lot of people reading this as well, everybody's shocked by this. Because what the Trump admin is saying is, if Palestine agrees to everything like this, if they agree to work with us and stop the conflicts, we could actually discuss a real potential statehood. Which, if that actually happens, it'd be the craziest thing ever. President Trump could be the president that recognizes Palestine. Which I'm not saying that's what's for sure going to happen, but it does seem like at the bare minimum, they are looking at it with a serious look at it. Like, hey, maybe we should work on Palestinian statehood. If they agree to everything we're pushing for, why not? If they want peace, if they claim they can actually rebuild all that stuff, and they prove they can, why be against it? Why be against Palestinian statehood? And the final thing is the U.S. will establish a dialogue between Israel and Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful and prosperous coexistence. Again, just common sense. And that's it. That is Trump's proposal. It's a long one. Again, I kind of skimmed over some parts, but the basic idea is the war may finally be close to ending, at least in the short term. Again, it's a big question as to how will this affect the region in 5 years from now. But if both sides agree to this, and it seems like there is momentum building, This could be a big win for everybody involved. It ends a nonsensical war, it stops all the innocents from dying, and it could potentially actually solve the issue. It could solve the issue once and for all. Make sure that Palestinians, they could potentially have statehood. If they prove they can run a functioning society. And that's always been the issue. If they can't run a functioning society, what do you think's gonna happen? But we'll see how this goes, because Hamas still has to agree to it, but it seems like there is real momentum. Now, will these other countries like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, will they force Hamas to agree? We shall see. But anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.